Split Fiction, the new game from It Takes Two developer Hazelight, has arrived on PS5. We're discussing that and reminiscing about our favourite ever co-op experiences in today's episode of the PlayStation Access Podcast. Hello and welcome to the PlayStation Access Podcast, the official podcast of PlayStation UK. I am your host, Rob Pearson. We are joined today by David Jackson.
Hello.
And very special guest, Nathan Dighton is here.
Hello, I talked over you. I'm out of practice.
Oh, ruined it.
I retract the word special. Guest. We are talking about Split Fiction today because it's out now on PS5, the latest game from Hazelight Studios, the team behind It Takes Two, A Way Out.
Yeah.
Joseph Fares, renowned, I'd almost call him an auteur now, like a co-op auteur. The king of the co-op games.
He feels like an icon as well, like a kind of cultural
hit
icon.
after hit with these co-op games.
Yeah.
And Split Fiction carries on that trend.
It very much
so
does.
I think first of all we should just talk about our Split Fiction impressions. I think Nath, you've probably played it more than either Dave or myself.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
Well, when I was playing this game with Joseph Fares
there we go.
in a special event in Los Angeles earlier on last month.
Who invited him?
He invited himself.
It was great. It was really good. I think the thing that surprised me, I've enjoyed all of their games. It's quite rare in the first hand to have games which are dedicated to this area. To co-op games seem to be slightly rarer than they have been. We know because we have trouble titling videos based on co-op games. So there are all sorts of co-op campaigns. There's couch co-op, local co-op split with online. There's stuff that you can just happen to play with two people. And then there's stuff like this, which is it's not just like a campaign where two people can join in. The mechanics are incredibly specifically crafted and designed for two people to interact with each other and to heighten and sophisticalize those kinds of interactions with each other.
Fantastic word there.
Thank you very much. And their series of games has always done that. What I found with this one was I sort of couldn't believe, I'll be honest, but going into it, I wasn't totally sold on the mix of science fiction and fantasy. And just the aesthetic of them sort of bumping into each other wasn't setting my world on fire. But the game itself, I mean, to be honest, when It Takes Two, some of the stuff in there is really wild and out there. And again, doesn't really hit me on a kind of, I wouldn't put a poster of some of the art of that game on my wall, but when you play these games, they're just undeniably incredibly fun, really polished, really well put together mechanically, and endlessly inventive. And I think so I've spoken for, I think the podcast is finished actually. I've been speaking for so long, but my point being, I was really surprised, blown away and impressed by the depth of sophistication in the mechanics, how much the variety and then the scale of it in this one in particular different to the other ones. Just it delivers.
It does deliver.
It's it's funny you mentioned the collision of sci-fi and fantasy. They are, they're the two genres I would consider myself to be a big fan of.
Yeah.
It's like, you're getting to play through a game that's like the basement of Waterstones brought to life.
Yes.
And it is a very much, when I heard the premise of this game, I was like, oh man, they're just having their cake and eating it there. They didn't know whether they were obviously having arguments. Shall we make this sci-fi? Shall we make this fantasy? Yeah. And it's like those memes where you're like, do you want this to be sci-fi or fantasy? Hazelight. Yes. Both at once, please. But the framing of it, the narrative framing of this is that there's a fantasy writer and a science fiction writer. They go to this tech corporation where they've invented this technology where you can live inside your stories for real. And an accident happens and they both end up in the same universe together, and it keeps glitching between the two.
You played the cutscene, right? You played the opening.
Yes.
Pair of you. The vibes of that place are off from the very beginning. Yeah. So they're just like, stand in that circle and we're just going to drain your mind.
A little more to the left. And it is very much, evil tech conglomerate.
Yes.
exploiting the creativity and the ideas of the writers for sure. But it's a fun bit of narrative framing, and I think I knew it was going to be good because the pedigree of Hazelight is amazing when it comes to co-op games, but I wasn't quite prepared for how charming and well written the interactions between Mio and Zoe, the two writers, are, to the extent where it's like it's a really good and human introduction to what is quite an outlandish premise. Yeah, they're kind of like, what the heck's going on? And I kind of like their back and forth between, Mio is the sci-fi writer, she doesn't like fantasy, and vice versa with Zoe, and they're kind of like the bants and the trash talk about each other's, the cliches of the genre. I can't believe you've used giants. Actually, they're trolls.
Well, and Zoe's more kind of daydreamy, and Mio's more kind of cynical, right? Yeah. That's that, and the two things kind of clash. So they are cliched. And at the beginning, as you say, there's that antagonism and gradually drawn out. I mean, in a way, it's like this is their playbook, right? It's divorcing couple, gradually coming closer together or reaching an understanding because of the cooperative nature of the game, and a similar vibe here.
But also, I thought the way Assassin's Creed, I remember, did it the first time, where the whole concept of the animus was a brilliant way to, within the world of the story, have a reason for the video gaminess of it all. Yeah. And I think that's going on here a lot. And in particular, I was playing it with Dave earlier, we both had a little giggle at the side stories. Like these little portals you can uncover, which are just little snippets of fun gameplay. And like the first one you go into, it's like a sliding sand dune world, and there are just zombie sharks in the sand. Yeah. And it's like, you don't need to explain why the zombie sharks are there because it's an unfinished idea from one of the writers. And she's like, why the heck are there zombie sharks in the sand? I never figured that out.
Yeah, that's what I did. Like, so yeah. There's loads of them, and they're kind of like, oh, this is a story I wrote when I was, a teenager, and it's just very strange. Did you play the superhero pigs level?
No, we're not at that bit yet. No.
I mean, it's a slight spoilers for this. The superhero pigs level is ridiculous in and of itself. One of them can turn into a giant spring, and the other one can sort of rocket propel themselves with methane, shall we say. and then at the end of the level, you're like, yay, I think they're talking like, yay, we've saved the pigs. And then you just go through an abattoir, and then you play as a sausage, and you have to you cook yourself as a hot dog. And it does seem so good. Mirroring like the fact that the ideas are taken from writers in the game does seem to be a culture at the studio where this is what a brilliant way to fit in mechanics and ideas that don't necessarily fit in with the wider premise or the bigger premise. They're not like a campaign level. They're just flights of fantasy.
And who else is doing this? Like that amount of work going into moments often. I mean, I saw, Nath, you did a kind of a let's play on the channel with Joseph Ferris.
That's correct. My friend.
It's been criminally underwatched. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen that video, you should go and watch it, because
it's just me. I've just watched it about 15,000 times.
He is extremely charismatic, and Nath is there. He talks, he's very I think outspoken in the best possible way about the quality of Hazelight, and
he believes in his own games.
Yeah, I think he's like at this point, I think we've earned the right to say we're really good at making co-op games. Yeah, and I mean, is anyone else doing this? Co-op is, I think, and it's difficult to sort of nail down exactly what I mean when I say co-op, but I think it's one of my favorite kind of gaming things, and so often it is an attachment to a game. It's like, a single player game, but we'll make it so that two people can play or whatever. Hazelight are making co-op only games. You can only play this with someone else. And for some people that is a shame because they might not have someone to play with. Although they are, I don't know if you guys have seen that they've set up a Discord for this one to try and encourage people.
That's such a smart idea.
And also I believe that only one of you needs to own the game. So if I buy the game, I can invite a friend to play it with me, which I think is just fantastic. Over the internet, that is, not like local co-op.
It's so funny, is it? Because when you kind of say, who knew that co-op games would be such an exploitable kind of niche, or an area that would be so popular, I would say we did, and only because of our particular jobs. We've been making videos about PlayStation games for over 10 years. And whenever we do like a list feature on co-op games, it does really well. And if you search on the channel, that's why we've done so many. But also because it is a little serviced area, or not as well serviced as it might be, or certainly that demand coming in. And I do think that online gaming in general, like some incredible things have been made possible, and you can have brilliant online multiplayer experiences. But for everyone who kind of grew up maybe in a different era of gaming and is used to being able to play co-op games, there is nothing really better, or certainly like some of my best gaming memories are sitting next to friends or my brother playing stuff together. And co-op games kind of do keep that alive, and it probably is a relatively niche market. And maybe that's why, like you said, who else is doing this? It's basically the question I'm answering. I'm not sure anyone is doing it to that extent. But then their previous game sold over 20 million copies.
Wow.
Like, it's a huge success, and like proof of concept that, as with anything, if you make the best version of a thing,
right,
I think you've got a chance. And obviously there is this market, and the reaction to those videos that we make about co-op games is always, there aren't enough of these. Like I've got huge history, legacy, memories, nostalgia about playing these. I'm so happy that this exists. Thank you for your recommendations. And here is a team actually servicing that really directly. They might be the only ones. Who knows? It might be that there isn't room for more, but they're doing a much needed and fabulous job.
They are, yeah, and I just love it. And they absolutely understand. Like you said, you know, maybe weren't too excited about the sci-fi and fantasy clash, but as soon as you started playing the game, their games just are. They are so fun right out of the box. I remember my experience of the first time I played It Takes Two was with you, Nath, on a stream.
Yeah.
And I didn't know too much about it at that time, apart from it was from the makers of A Way Out, and that it was co-op. And it was instantly so fun. Even with a kind of flying love book with a slightly suspicious accent.
I remember us pausing and being like, it's funny when you're playing stuff live for the first time because you can't say the things that you might want to say. There was a surprise, but
even in spite of that, it was so fun, and they really understand that a co-op game, the essential ingredient is that the players need each other. It has to be asymmetrical. You can't just be two copies of a thing. Even if it's like you both need to press a button at the same time, it's way beyond that. It has to be asymmetrical. I have to be able to do things that you can't do.
I think you can. It's a different thing, isn't it? I've had fun playing campaigns where there's two of us and we're just shooting stuff.
Yeah,
but you are right. It's a different level, isn't it?
But on top of that, rather even aside from just making it asymmetrical, they change it every 10 minutes,
it's ridiculous.
all the time. It's like now we're in a completely, they've created a game concept that allows them to go to loads of different environments with different like characters there. I mean, you are playing as different characters. You have different powers. You're in the future, you're in the past. You're in like these completely made up worlds with made up rules.
Well, it bears saying that if you set your game in one particular kind of world, like a medieval world, you're going to be using the same trees, the same stone textures. Your research is all going to be in one area. Like just in terms of the cost of making a game, it's going to be less than if you're jumping between that and science fiction all the time, or if you're going between different kinds of medieval world. And it was one of the things that he said on the video, which I do encourage people to go and see. No one is more interesting about this game than the person who made this game. But just talking about the relative cost of polishing up specific ideas, like that are relatively throwaway in terms of the time that they take up in the game as a whole. Might be 5 minutes, might be 10 minutes, but they have to be as polished and as good to play as anything else. And as to your point, the settings need to be as well designed and as interesting. That is expensive. It's like like you will race through it because you have no choice in some of the levels. But it's, just you're having a luxury experience for sure.
Yeah. Luxury was the thing that really hit me with it. Like I was saying to Dave, this feels like playing a AAA single player action adventure. And just it's split screen, and just the way, I don't know why this is surprising to me or felt revolutionary, but just the way I was able to manipulate the camera, or just what I was looking at. And then I look at Dave, whose character is standing right next to me, but he's looking at a completely different thing up there. And there's like a section where you're leaping across like gravity-defying cars in sci-fi traffic,
unbelievable,
and swinging about. And I'm looking at the scene like, oh my god! And then Dave needs me to grab a thing, and I look over at Dave's screen to see where he is, and the whole scene looks completely different.
Yeah,
and the game is just seemingly effortlessly rendering this all for us both.
Yeah, there's a huge bump in ambition, right?
Unbelievable. And then there's just the quite obvious satisfaction of trying to figure stuff out together, like constantly, okay, how do I get past this bit? Rob, you need to do a thing here. You need to grab that. Why don't you try this? And even communicating. I thought I was going to be communicating with Dave all the time, but we spoke surprisingly little. A lot of what we were doing was actually just pointing at things and me grabbing a thing. And I was like, okay, try this. And I just threw a crate at a thing. And Dave was like, oh yeah, I can go over there.
Well, it's funny the different kind of joys that I get from this, and what you're kind of saying is helping me to kind of filter them out. And some of them are figuring stuff out, obviously.
Yeah.
But also, once there is that joy as a pair, when you figured something out, is being really good at it. Yeah. So like the second, the third, fourth time you're doing a thing, and you're like, hey, we're like the team that does this thing. That's really fun as well.
The team that there's the first little mini boss fight where you have to, like a flying car is shooting you, and Dave's character was like ejecting crates, and my character was grabbing them and throwing them at the boss. And at the beginning, I was like, oh God, what do we do? By the end, it was just like, I'm doing it now. Just flinging them. It did feel amazing. And it just changes pace so often that it doesn't give you time to get bored of anything. You're constantly being flung into the next bit, constantly being introduced to new things.
I think that it's also, and this is the same as It Takes Two, it's incredibly, maybe not forgiving, it's forgiving in as much as if one of you dies, it's genuinely not a problem while the other one lives. It's like the opposite of Harry Potter. Like one of you stays alive, and then the other one will come back, and it means that mistakes aren't particularly costly or annoying. You know, if one of you is struggling on a thing, it's not like you've reset us or whatever. It's I
think you're right, and I was going to say a similar thing, but flipping it around in terms of pitching that balance between challenge and frustration must be like a key like thing for them. And I remember going to play the Prince of Persia kind of reboot, oh my God, like years and years ago, for review. You know, the one where you basically can't die. You'd fall off and it would just reset. Right. And I remember them saying, we kind of thought about it, dying is sort of meaningless in modern gaming and it's a frustration we can just remove. And similar, like just having that medium fail state of one, and it's quite exciting if it's in the middle of a boss fight or whatever, just stay alive.
Just stay alive, yeah.
And keep it going. And so I do think that is, because there are sections, did you get to, I think it's a bit further, we were thrown around the game in the event that I went to. There's kind of like almost an Akira style, you're both on a motorbike.
Oh no, I've not got to that.
It's like this cyberpunk. It like in terms of spectacle, it's incredible. The gameplay, as you might expect, it's like I said, the spectacle of it is wowing, and you are literally in charge of it. But it's probably not rubber banded, but it's like bowling with bumpers a little bit.
Guide rails.
There's guard rails, and I guess the level of that, I guess you're factoring in, like I said, actually being in control and challenge versus frustration, and maybe also thinking about replayability at some point. That as a polish and as a balancing act must be incredibly hard.
Yeah, there's also just so much set piece action. As it just feels like you're having a treat all the time, just a lovely treat. It's always something for your eyes to be looking at, and I'm enjoying the way I move through the world. It is fast, like it does move at a quick pace, not just because you're moving from one world to the next, but within those. And I love when you know, thinking about communication and not having to say much, there's sort of like almost like a communication with the game developer, you know, when you play through perfectly through something they've set up for you.
Right.
Like, I mean, early on in the game that you're in like a town full of trolls, and there was a bit where we were hopping and skipping over these trolls who were in like a town square. And
I haven't thought about that section, but they're all holding poles.
Yeah. Yes.
I've not really thought about why they're holding those poles, apart from so that you can jump on
I think they had banners on them or something. It felt fine to me. I was like,
I didn't think about it.
But and you hop on one and the guillotine goes. Hop on the guillotine and it cut off one of the trolls' arms. But like, and you're climbing up this tower and it's quite breathless. And I just love that sense of like experiencing something for the first time and getting through it.
Oh yeah,
you know, and like it's real. It makes it real, and just I mean, that's not exactly what happened. Rob and I did both die at one point, but and then I was sad. But there's lots of that. There's so many like set piece, and some of it is surprising as well. Sometimes it's just in the world, and it doesn't even affect your gameplay. Like the very opening level where you're in this like you're just. It's kind of the tutorial. There's like a massive explosion in the distance in this sci-fi world where this story is kind of happening around you. It's very cool, I guess. It's just cool and fun.
There was a moment. It's actually a relatively small moment, a few levels in, and just to both of your points, it reminded me of a feeling that I get. And I don't necessarily want it from every game, but when I will play like a new Naughty Dog game, and I am just. In particular, I would just be like almost beaten down by the detail and the quality, and you're kind of like, oh my God. Yeah. You're just like on a street and there's like 12 different sorts of actual tree or whatever, and everything looks incredible. And there was a moment where I had just absorbed quick fire the basics of the game. I was playing with somebody I'd not met before, but we were, developing an understanding. And there's a moment where you get your weapons for the first time, and one of the characters, I can't remember who, but can manipulate gravity, pull herself onto different surfaces, and then will stay there. And that gives this whole dimension to that. When you say you were looking across at the split screen and seeing the different perspective, you're just seeing a different... a completely different side to the levels and how they're put together. And just in terms of the imagination and the design of the levels, there was something about it where like just a cool run of 3 or 4 different rooms, puzzles happened, and then we were both drawn into the same tunnel. Yeah. And one of us was on top and one of us was like underneath. And I just thought visually that's so cool. Everything that's just happened is so cool. And I just thought like I'm in the hands of people who really know what they're doing. It's such a quality experience.
It's not just imagination, is it? It's the ability to actually conceive of these physical spaces, architecturally design them geometrically so they work and are satisfying to play through. And I remember trying to have a go at Little Big Planet where it's like, oh, you can make your own level. That's where I first got the realization that, oh my God, people who make games are like, amazing. Yeah. Flipping it. Because all I managed to do was make a bridge, and I pulled a lever to make the bridge come down, and the lever was just by the bridge.
Even more so when you think that most games are made by teams of people who are all having to work together and all have their own disciplines, and this discipline has to work with that one and that one, and it's so much work. It's so difficult to comprehend.
Everyone who's worked on this must just be a genius, because everything is just working so perfectly. Yeah. You need to be able to think it first, just to have the idea, and then to actually be able to execute them to the precision that they have. There's nothing frustrating about it that I've played so far. No. Not a single. Everything has felt polished, honed, perfected,
and it's funny as well.
Yes,
it's funny. Really funny. There's a bit on that level. On the motorbike where one of you's just on the back and I think it's maybe defusing stuff or just doing bombs, and at one point you realise there's a bomb on your bike and you have to defuse it and pull out like basically a phone, and it's like a joke on how hard the internet is to. The first thing is like you have to do like a recapture, and then you have to like put in a password, and it's all like I think it's designed so
on the back of a bike.
It's funny.
I had that same thought, Nath, about the gravity thing, and that was my character Mio, and when you're doing it on that kind of flying sci-fi traffic jam or whatever, and it was mind-bending. I lost track of what orientation I was in, and I realized it didn't matter. Like the game it's not about that. It's like just play what's in front of you. But it also made me think that the replayability, because I feel like my experience of that level was probably very different to Rob's, and fair. Absolutely could play the game. I'd gladly play that level again from Rob's perspective. And I think you're right, Rob, as well. The technical prowess on display is huge, and actually, I mean, again, Joseph Ferris mentioned it in your interview, Nath. Just, I think he was really proud of what the team's accomplished, because that is basically rendering 2 completely different viewpoints of these, quite very detailed and like hectic worlds often. There's so much going on. I think that I've seen the bit you played, Nath, with on the bike with the phone hacking or whatever, or trying to use the phone, and just you can see. I've just paid attention. I watched it a few times. You can see the person driving the bike, and then you can see like the close-up view of the person on the back, and in the back, around their phone, you can see in real time the world around them as it's being dictated by the person who's driving the bike. So they go through a tunnel, and you see the tunnel. It's just crazy how much detail is in there, and that they are rendering everything twice on this one screen is super impressive.
It's funny, kind of talk about replayability. As sometimes there is at events, there was like a small problem with my first session, and this was like, I think about 2 hours. So I actually ended up playing everything again for the event, and partly so that I could do the Let's Play with Joseph. And I enjoyed it actually the second time more, partly because when we're recording stuff, you want to be slightly better at the game so that you're showing it off to its best advantage. He was obviously way better than me and very familiar with everything that's going on in the game. But it did kind of give me a sense of what the replayability must be like. I will say, I think probably we talked about the different kind of enjoyments that you get out of this. Some games are just fun to replay, even relatively simple like side-scrolling shooters or whatever, just because there's a fun in the mechanics, and I think that the level of polish within this game means that it is just basically enjoyable to interact with. But I will say, like, my general take on this style of game is that it's like this I say luxury again, it's like a consumable almost. Like the absolute magic is the first time you play it through with someone that you're intending to play the whole thing through, and you're discovering things together. Very few things will measure up to that. And the second time round, when you've really figured it out, maybe, or it might be slightly diminishing returns. As to your point, Dave, when you nail something, it makes it feel like you're doing a movie or something.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? When
exactly.
it's like there's 5 difficulty spikes in this great sort of set piece, and you nail them all. That's a great feeling. That's me. I'm eating it. I'm eating this game, and it's delicious.
Yeah, it is delicious.
I that level where you said you wanted to play it again as me. Like I just remember just looking at your character running on the wall next to me, jumping over like these laser grids, thinking, this looks cool just to watch. Yeah. And then I realised I need to be doing something here. Yeah. Like grabbing these gates to pull them out of your way as you run through. But I can't wait to see what else is in store in this game, and really get to grips with, there's so much in it. We've talked about how it's funny. You get these different perspectives from the co-op, but just the ingenuity of the puzzles themselves. Even if it was, they're designed to be solved in co-op, but even if it was just a single player puzzle action adventure, like some of the ingenuity in the puzzles, it's just so good. They're that perfect level where you're not really going to get stuck on anything for longer than a couple of minutes, but they're challenging enough to make you feel really clever when you pull them off. Yeah. And it's just, like you say, it's a game that just makes you feel good.
Sweet spot.
All the time.
Yeah, it does.
Who are you going to play it with?
I don't know. Maybe I'll play with you, Dave. Because I was thinking, like, another challenge they've got is obviously balancing the fact that quite a lot of people are probably going to be playing this with their partners. Yeah. There's going to be differing levels of gaming experience 100%. Between those people. Yeah. And so it has to work for people who maybe aren't as familiar with games.
Only anecdotally, but like quite a lot of anecdotes, because we get lots of comments and correspondence. But these games are played by people with generally non-game playing partners. Yeah. More often than I've heard of any other series being
which played. I think is an unbelievable kind of compliment to them, really, because to be that accessible, and also for people who are really familiar with games to not be kind of dumbing down. Do you know what I mean? Like,
or feel sniffy about them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just really fun. That is my experience. I played It Takes Two with my partner. She's not super familiar with games, really. And she absolutely loved it. We had loads of fun together. And I think that, that is another game with a lot of imagination and with a lot of, it's the same DNA of this one, obviously. This, I think that Split Fiction has kind of pushed all of that, amped all of that up massively. But I will definitely be playing Split Fiction with her again. She's super excited about it, as I am. However, I would, it's going to be difficult for me to play with her because we have a child, and so getting time together to do it is difficult. So if anyone want, and Rob, I mean, we've started. If you wanted to play it over lunchtime,
yeah, for sure,
I would happily do that. I might not tell her that I'm doing that. But that's that's okay.
I might try and play it with my daughter.
Oh my god!
I wouldn't have thought that would have been possible maybe 2 or 3 months ago, but seeing how good she is at Astro, she's got all the skills necessary to be able to platform.
This is perfect.
This is perfect.
It's just full of fun stuff. Yeah, that's what I'm going to try and do. Whether she'll be interested in it or not.
Well, if you play it with me, and then you can seem really smart when you go home and play it with her, and you already know how to do that bit. Or you're just not going to play it with me, are you? I've been.
Yeah, you're out, mate.
I'm out.
You're done. Do you know?
Do you want to play, Nath?
I think what you say about it being accessible is a really big deal, and it's something which because we've been, we've all played games since we were kids, and we have been doing it for a living for a long time. So obviously we are very much on the kind of experienced end, being in and around people who take games very seriously, and then I think occasionally taking games seriously ourselves. But one thing that you forget is that some people are there's a huge spectrum of ability levels or experience levels with games, and there are people who would love to play games, but some of the best games, and like there are more and more really big studios taking this really seriously in terms of accessibility, and not just in terms of accessibility for skill level as well as for differently able people. And I think that a game like this, which is able to put two people of differing skill levels or experience levels in the same game and have them have a meaningful interactive experience, is such a big thing. And basically what I'm saying, I've spoken to friends and family members who see games because they're more visible than ever and more interesting than ever, and they're kind of like, I'm not sure I would be able to play this game, because like even twin stick controls, for someone who hasn't picked up a game for 10 or 20 years, not necessarily like a small kind of skill jump. So I think it's like better than just cool. I think it's like really meaningful.
You
culturally.
do take for granted, don't you, how familiar with just having a gamepad in your hands you are when you give a game to someone who never plays games. And you're like, just move over there, and then well, how do I move? And like, press this button, and then looking at the controller. And just they don't even know how to. The controller doesn't sit naturally in their hands. Whereas for us, you can play a game you've never played before, but you just, as soon as that controller is in your hands, you sort of know
there's an underlying language
where you are. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's a pretty amazing achievement. I've got some sort of general questions and discussion prompts around co-op games in general.
Okay.
I think we've touched upon a lot of this already. Split Fiction obviously being an incredible co-op game, but what for you makes a good co-op game? Everything we've just talked about, Split Fiction.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think that to take it to the next level, I think making the players need each other is the key. Obviously, Split Fiction uses like asymmetry to do that. It doesn't have to be that, like we said. It can just be that puzzles or things in games, mechanics just require two people to coordinate. But I think asymmetry is the best thing because it means that everyone feels special. I do a thing that you can't do, you do a thing that I can't do, and we put them together and they do something special. I think that's like the real sweet spot, and that's what's so great about Split Fiction, and that again that it keeps giving you different versions of that. It's not just that we're I'm a big character and you're a small one, and we go through a whole game together. I mean, I can think of I hope I'm not speaking ill of some of my. I mean, one of my favorite games is Portal 2, and that co-op mode is absolutely fantastic.
I've got Portal 2 written down for what I assumed would be a top co-op games list that we would do at some point in this podcast, and maybe though that's because it's such a good game.
It is such a good game.
It's an unbelievable game.
It is.
I think there are. Am I right in saying there are bits of Portal 2 that can only be played with two people? Or am I thinking of something
it's got
else?
a co-op campaign.
Yes.
So it's like a whole different bit of the game.
Oh, it's a completely different campaign.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, and they're kind of. So you both have the same abilities.
Right.
You both have a portal gun. Well, I think one of you fires the orange end and one of you fires the blue end. But you're in kind of two different environments and you have to work together to pass things between the environments and stuff like that. Like so it's not asymmetrical, but apart from the places you're in are kind of asymmetrical.
Right.
But so yeah, I don't want to speak ill of any other like different versions of co-op, because I think I've had loads of fun with loads of them. But I think that the asymmetry in split fiction is quite special, and it just makes you need the other player in a way. I don't know, and it's funny. It feels right as well.
I haven't really given loads of deep thought to this before, but what you say just makes me realise that even in kind of group dynamics of multiplayer games where you'd have like a party and you have a tank and healer and damage, and even that is like a version, like specialisation.
Yes.
Breeds coordination, right? And or even something like Helldivers, even just the differing loadouts that you can get there. It's like a slightly not as markedly differentiated version of a similar thing where, well, you can get supply backpacks, for example, in Helldivers, or in some you will be specialised in, I'm going to dedicate myself to blowing up heavy armoured enemies or whatever.
I mean, those games are amazing, or Helldivers 2 especially, because you could just go in with exactly the same. You could have 4 players who have exactly the same loadout, and you could still complete that mission, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it also allows for people to become very specialised and to do a certain thing really well, and for teams of people to come in together and have their specialisms, which is, so again, like that accessibility is fantastic, where it doesn't say like the only way to do this is for one of you to be a range player, one of you to be a tank player. It's that's excellent design as well.
There are different ways of needing each other, aren't there?
Yeah.
When it comes to these co-op games. Like one very recent example that springs to mind for me is Monster Hunter Wilds, which, playing single player, it's a series I've always sort of like tried to get into, but I've always bounced off for some reason. Monster Hunter Wilds, I was getting into it a little bit, and then I finally played it multiplayer with Connor and Alex, and it was very much like, oh, so this is what the game is supposed to be. This is where the magic is. And sometimes there is something magic about just sharing the same virtual space with other people and doing a thing together. And in this instance, it's all 3 of us smacking this enormous monster for about 15 minutes until it dies, as it rampages through different environments. And you're there, I'm there with a sword trying to hit it in the face while Alex is climbing on its back, and Connor's like ranged with a gun. It's just cool. Like it's not the precisely designed co-op of a split fiction. It's just this is a thing you have to take down together, or it's at least it's more fun and more doable when you're doing it together. And even when the monsters are down in Monster Hunter, it's kind of cool. Just you all get on your little sacrets, which are the chocobo style mounts in Monster Hunter. You're just riding around the world, looking at stuff. I remember when Destiny first came out, just all on our sparrows, just like shooting across these sci-fi planets.
Sometimes it's just good to hang out.
Oh my god, I'm in a cave.
Yeah.
And well, come over here and check out this cave.
We streamed Helldivers earlier this week, Helldivers 2, and I was just saying, there's always just something to be doing in the background. I'm collecting samples, I'm upgrading my destroyer, I'm earning medals so that I can buy some stuff from the War Bond, helping Dave with his platinum. But in the meantime, like all of that's relatively long term, and in the meantime, I'm just enjoying the gameplay, and it doesn't have to be as focused and specifically designed as a split fiction. It's more of a sort of a sandbox really for us to come and shoot things and then just hang out and chat. But it's got all those other things kind of going. It's like a hangout.
There's something I think really cool about the moment where you recognize someone else in your game as a human, especially if you've been interacting with NPCs. Like, it's unmistakable. Like, humans, we recognize other humans, but I think it's true in video games as well. Like, another human, just the way they move and interact with, sometimes it's as ridiculous as them just hopping up and down all over the place, obviously. But I always get quite excited when I see another human in my game. It's like, oh, another person's here. Journey's a great example, I think, of this as well. A game that can be complete single player. And if you're playing it co-op with someone, you don't necessarily have to finish it co-op with them. They can just go off and finish the game. And so sometimes you'll be playing Journey and you'll encounter another person for maybe 2 minutes. And then they go off. and you get that strange little flicker of connection with another human being, and then they're gone.
That's exactly what I was going to say. In Journey, it's almost like we've designed this game. It's not a co-op game, but it's about being in this particular environment and feeling these particular things. And every now and again, someone else will share it with you, and that is just really meaningful on its own.
Yeah.
It's really unique, isn't it?
And you get something like Death Stranding, where you experience almost like what would you call it? Like
an echo?
An echo, or the traces of other human presence without ever directly interacting with another human player. So you will, structures will appear that other players have built in their games, and that sort of leaks into your world. As a community, you can band together materials and create roads and bridges. Other players can leave ladders and ropes, and you leave likes on things. You can cool out in the game, and if a player has cooled out in their game in the similar area, you'll hear like the faint echo of where they've cooled out as well. So you get like the ghost of other players in your game, and that's like a really unique way of. It's not co-op at all. It's not multiplayer, but you're encountering other players through what they've left behind, which is great as well.
You've made me think about games that do that really well. Obviously the Soulsborne games.
Yes.
I mean, so much of that is just fascinating. The way, I'm trying to think. That when you would see those kind of like ghostly outlines of other players who are just going through a similar thing at the same time as you.
So strange.
It's just in the game. I don't even know exactly why it's there, but I loved it, especially when you are playing some of those games, because they're hard and scary worlds.
When you don't know the worlds, though, they just add to the eeriness.
Yeah.
Like people waiting at gates and things.
A ghost of someone who just has died. You're standing in the same spot where they've died, and you see their ghost just being like,
Yeah.
Oh God,
Yeah.
what's about to kill me? And then the classic, you'll get like amazing item through here, and it'll be just a horrible boss or a spike trap or something.
We've talked before about how like the really specific culture of co-op in those games where you summon people to help you maybe with difficult bosses. And we've a few years ago did that series of you getting a platinum on Bloodborne, and deliberately, obviously it has the facility within the game to deliberately set up so that you can play privately with two friends, and there is a bit of setup in terms of making sure that you're all at the right place and you can get to the same boss and whatever, but that's fantastic. That's kind of more traditional co-op, but the strangeness of when I tried to fight Amygdala and kill Amygdala for my platinum, just summoning randoms and hoping that someone incredible would turn up to help me to do this completely impossible flipping boss. And then just everything about it is so good that you're not sure if anyone online? Is anyone still playing this game? And there's that just moment where they materialize, where you're kind of, it's like someone teleporting into the Enterprise, and you're kind of like, who is this? And the person who helped me, I knew immediately, the person who helped me to kill Amygdala was wearing only like fur skin pants and a hat with a giant club, and I was like, this is going to be absolutely fine.
I had a similar but opposite experience where I love what you said. I totally understand that. Ring the bell, and it's like, is anyone going to come? And it takes a while. Sometimes you're like, hello. And these two people came, and they were both amazing. And I was like, my God, this is it. And we walked through the boss door, and she immediately killed me. Just immediately killed. Like, I honestly don't think there was anything I could away. And I rang the bell again, and someone else.
It's like that cartoon. Did you ever watch that cartoon with the Loch Ness monsters, and the girl would play the bagpipes near the lock, and it was like potluck, which monster would come up. I need the help of this particular monster. Oh, not
Family Ness.
Family Ness.
Had an absolute banger of a theme tune.
That's like ringing the bell in Bloodborne.
You never thought
I hope it's that semi-naked club-wielding lunatic. It's not.
You never thought about getting help for the Tower Knight, Rob?
No.
Okay.
No, I'll do that by myself.
Okay. All right then.
Okay.
On to your next question.
Everyone else has done it first time with basic gear.
That's it.
I just need to get.
There was a text
to get better at it.
on the weekend on the PlayStation Access WhatsApp group, just kind of saying, "I just did this first time."
Yeah, I didn't reply.
No, I noticed.
Alex replied, "I don't believe you."
Yeah, I'm not sure I believe him either. So we've got games that we've talked about where co-op is baked into the design, like Split Fiction, and then other forms of co-op, which you've also just talked about, where it isn't necessarily part of it. But with both of those, like, are there co-op experiences that stick in your mind, like particular things that have happened, either something that's brilliantly designed or something that has almost happened organically by accident that you still look back on and think, wow, that was cool, but specifically something that's happened cooperatively?
Well, when you say wow, I just immediately thought Wowter, and I thought about Fallout.
That was amazing.
Fallout 76.
That was great.
And I guess if people listening to the podcast and don't know, this refers to a stream that we did on Fallout 76 when it first came out.
Yeah.
Where we were playing with a community member, I think, called Wowter. And
former community member, I think.
I can't even remember why or how, but you guys, we were writing notes.
What do you mean, you guys?
Was I on the stream?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were on the stream with me. I don't think Dave was on the stream.
I was. I killed him.
Dave,
You're giving away the end of the story.
You weren't a face on the stream.
No, I wasn't.
Dave
a face
and
on
I
the
were
stream,
exploring Deathclaw Island.
Yes.
Yeah.
We wondered why it was called that.
I remember I was getting messages from Dave and I wrote down for you, kill Wowter.
Yeah, that's right.
Now,
yeah.
I've got the notebook still. And the question is, shall we kill him? And I showed it to you and you just nodded. You can see this on the stream. I show Nathan a notebook and he just nods. And I think he must have texted Dave or something that we're going to kill him.
So that was great. I guess that's more just it is co-op, isn't it? But it's more of a...
I think
interaction.
There's so much. I suddenly realised, I think it must be true that we're social beings.
Yes.
Because I suddenly think, and also about co-op and the kind of value of it, I don't know if it is rooted in the past where maybe it was more difficult to play together because just, well, in my own life, like I didn't always have games hardware. I'd go around to my friend's house and play, and often then there were a lot of single player games, so you would end up just watching, and getting to play with someone was extremely special. And I suppose the most basic version of it is like Pass the Pad, like Level and Life, all these kind of ways that you have of like, I'll get to the boss, you do the boss. I've got tons and tons of experience of like special stuff like that in my head. I think I had loads of fun playing with a friend through the co-op missions on Modern Warfare 2 when that first came out, and they were really...
I've written those down. They were so good.
They were so good. The Spec Ops missions.
Spec Ops, yeah.
They were fantastic. I think the three of us, Nath, it will make you sad, but you were part of it a lot of the time. PES Master League.
Oh, I see.
Rob and I
amazing.
Spent probably 2 actual years, not actual years, we spent every lunchtime for 2 years at least following a PES Master League.
Yeah.
Just through seasons and seasons. And that was fun, but much more fun because we were playing it together. Like I've played my fair share of Master League,
shouting at the players,
yes,
creating our own little stories.
Exactly.
So
having that shared world of this Master League, of the people in it, and
the form,
the teams that we would come up with. These teams would become our rivals, and would these rubbish teams would unexpectedly beat us, and we'd absolutely thrash the good teams. But like sharing it together was excellent, and developing that kind of sixth sense of, I'm sure we were rubbish, but like we had kind of an understanding of what each other were going to do and where we were going to go.
I guess I've got a similar thing, and it's on the channel as well, of on early what is it? I can't remember what year it would have been. Probably about FIFA 15, playing co-op seasons with Jay on the channel and winning Division 1. And that's the night. I love playing sports games cooperatively.
Definitely the best.
Used to really enjoy it with my brother as well. And no, I don't know. Jay's not like, he just wants to smash me up now. He doesn't want to play.
Doesn't want to play on your team.
No, because I'm rubbish. So yeah, he doesn't want to play with me at all. He wants to smash me into bits. And my brother was always just like, oh yeah, we could. I was like, yeah, of course we can. This is amazing. It's an endless resource for having fun forever. Why wouldn't we play NHL 94 relentlessly?
It is so good. Sports games cooperatively are just fantastic.
I used to play TOCA World Touring Cars cooperatively with my sister.
How can you play a racing game cooperatively?
It wasn't. We just invented co-op mode.
Yeah.
We played split screen multiplayer, but the co-op element was I was winning the championship. And my sister, her job was to go immediately, as soon as the race started, turn around and drive backwards along the track and just smash up all of the other cars. Because they had this amazing mechanic where your car took real-time damage, and if your gearbox broke or your steering broke, you had to go into the pit to have it fixed.
Yeah.
And so we basically forced everyone else into the pit lane by breaking their cars, and then we'd hem them in the pit lane, try and stop them from coming out of the pit lane by smashing them up again. Oh God, it was
I can't
so
believe
amazing.
this has never been
And
like a Christmas maze episode.
You got to write your. We found this amazing. You could write your name. Your player name would appear on the rear livery of your car.
Wow.
And it was so magical on PS1 to see my actual name on the back of this car.
Yeah.
Talking of
Great
racing,
times.
I mean, it's more of a. There's a no firm distinction between co-op and just like PvE online multiplayer. Really, is there? I don't know. Like, is Helldivers
I would
co-op?
consider it a different type of co-op. It's a PvE multiplayer, I guess, is how you would categorize it.
I was thinking of Burnout Paradise, like just playing online with a group of 6 and beginning to understand the game, and then certain things you can only do together. Again, like getting that platinum, the quest for that platinum was so much fun when that game came out.
I mean, we've had loads of fun.
Memories.
Warzone.
Played a lot of Warzone.
And we've played with Jay a few times.
Yeah.
Had some
Rocket League.
Great. Oh my God,
Rocket League.
Yeah, just
Those are the
fantastic. Co-op games are where it's at. I love them.
My sister met her now husband in Burnout Paradise.
Wow.
Online. They were just playing Burnout Paradise together, and
Nath might have played
And
with
now
your
they're married.
sister and or her husband.
who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I always remember playing the Nightfall in Destiny
I get yes.
when
yeah,
that first
right.
came out. I don't think you were there, Dave, because
No.
you were sad and were like, "Oh, you're making a fire team without me."
Yes.
So we were doing the Nightfall, and I just remember, Nath, you had the only gun, like that amazing sniper rifle that was good against that.
Icebreaker.
Yes, that's it,
Yeah.
Icebreaker. And me and our friend Meeks were just hiding under a little bit of, like, we were
Stairs.
cheesing it basically. We'd
Yeah.
found a place to hide where the boss couldn't get us, and Nath would bravely peek out for a couple of seconds with his icebreaker and take a couple of shots, duck back in. We must have been there for half an hour.
But we did
You
it.
just chipping away at this boss. And I remember one time, the only bit that I did that I can be proud of was when you were running from cover to cover and got killed, and it was up to me to come out and revive you. And I managed to do it successfully, and I felt like a hero.
I mean, they couldn't have won without you.
But it was just so good.
Those sorts of stories.
The Vault of Glass raid. I remember that's like a 6-player raid in the first Destiny, the first of the raids. Like, at the time, I'd never played anything like it. Like trying to figure out how to get through it. Like, I'm not sure there's anything comparable now. Like a really tough, obscure, not just a combat challenge, but a platforming challenge and a puzzle challenge as well, trying to figure out how to actually get through this thing.
Yeah.
But then you got to the point, I think I only joined when I had a group of people who were quite knowledgeable of it, and I was like guided through and told where to stand and told who to shoot. But it was amazing, just so amazing, like feeling part of this well-oiled cooperative machine where everyone knew their job. It was really crucial that everyone did their job. One weak link in the chain and everyone would be done for. There was a point where all 5 of us had done this complicated jumping, platforming bit, and we were waiting for Meeks to do it. And he must have been there for about 10 minutes, just hearing his anguished screams.
Just a little tea break.
The raids were unbelievable. I mean, the
Yeah.
raids that are in Destiny 2 are still fantastic, but getting your head around it for the first time, yeah, you're right.
I've never done a raid. And
Magic.
it's a big...
Oh, you missed out.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a big shame
You missed
for
out.
me.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Never mind. Well, I think that pretty much wraps us up on this split fiction / co-op game special. As we've said, Split Fiction is out right now on PS5. You don't need to own 2 copies of it. If you own a copy of it, you can invite a friend to play, or indeed, if you don't have any friends, you can join the Discord and find a friendly person to play alongside you. We would heartily recommend giving it a go. It's a fantastic experience, as are all of Hazelight's games. So thank you very much, Dave, and thank you very much, Nath, for joining us this week. We will be back in another 2 weeks' time for the next episode of the PlayStation Access podcast. We'll see you then.
PlayStation